Welcome to Talking Data Equity for Friday, April 4th. Very, very happy to see you. My name is Heather Kraus, and I'm a mathematical statistician. And I'm the founder of an organization called We All Count, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. And one of the things that We All Count does is host this gathering, which is kind of semi-weekly on talking data equity. And the idea behind talking data equity is that it's a place for anybody who has projects or questions or resources or success stories or not so success stories that they want to share about getting equity into their data projects, most often the quantitative data projects. This is the place where you can come and share that and ask for help and pool our resources. And in a place and time like today, it's always a good place to remember that no matter what country you're from, no matter what sector you're working in, no matter what scientific discipline you're from, you are not working on your equity projects alone. All right. So sometimes on Talking Data Equity, we have special guests. Sometimes on Talking Data Equity, we talk about a specific technique. Sometimes we share tools. There's been a little bit of a scheduling change for today. We were hoping to have a friend of mine, a professor who specializes in Indigenous data sovereignty of the peoples who live in the northern part of what we now call Europe. So Sami people who kind of live in the Arctic Circle in what we now call Norway and Sweden. And unfortunately, they are not able to join us today. So instead of having a special guest, we are going to we're going to talk about an issue that a number of you have been writing me about. So we are going to talk about missing data and how to handle missing data and how important it is to pay attention to how that data got missing when we are making a decision about how to handle that. Sorry, one second. We have a little bit of a technical problem with somebody in the waiting room. There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about missing data today from a really practical perspective and from the idea of how to get equity into this kind of thorny question. And before I jump into missing data, I know we have a lot of new people joining us, which is a sign of the times. The good news is that more and more people are actually getting serious about their concrete commitment to getting equity in data. And the bad news is all of the kind of personal and professional devastation that is causing us to care about this and realize how concrete the problem is, that it's not just something to talk about. It's an actual very serious problem that is costing lives, that is costing money. And one of the ways to reduce the overwhelm around that is to pay attention to the specific, concrete, day-to-day choices that are in front of us today, that are on our plates today. That's, of course, not going to fix large economic and political problems, but it is going to help us avoid doing further damage today to the people that we are trying to make meaning with and for. And so the way I think about this is I think about it through a set of tools that We All Count calls the data equity framework, which means that we're going to look at our data project and we're going to figure out kind of which part of our data project are we working on right now. And this is true whether I'm working on like project that I love for my local library, like trying to count how many little kids showed up to learn to read on a Saturday morning, or whether it's a different kind of project that I love, which is, like a longitudinal, decades long supply chain project to try and understand, are we having more success with getting milk to the people that need it in rural Bangladesh? Whatever kind of a data project you're working on, if you take a minute to kind of figure out, where am I in this project? Am I like scoping out this project, which is what we call motivation? Am I trying to get my hands on some data, which is what we call the data collection sourcing step? Am I trying to make meaning for this? Am I trying to make a data story? That's the interpretation step. If you can kind of locate where you might be in your project, it's going to make it a little bit easier for your mind to notice, like, okay, given that I'm in maybe the data collection step, there's 2 or 3 choices that I need to pay attention to right now. And choices are all of the opportunities that you have to embed equity in your data project. And one of the things that we work with at We All Count is this 99 choices checklist. I know that some of you have seen this a lot of times. Some of you will be seeing it for the first time. So I'm going to share it in the chat just in case this is the first time you're seeing it. You don't need this for today, but it's a little bit unfriendly to share a slide of something and then not share it in the chat. So I'm going to share that in the chat. And what that is essentially not a list of every choice that exists in a data project, for sure. There's way more than 99. And I'm not saying that I think you should focus on 99 choices. You should not. That will lead immediately to overwhelm and unintentional negative consequences. The reason that we make this list of choices is that we hope that maybe you can notice 1 or 2 choices that are in projects that you're working on. And that will remind you that even if what you can do is notice that choice, even if you don't actually have the job title or the professional position to change the way that choice is getting made, even if we start noticing and documenting the way that these choices get made, that's level 1, noticing, making choices intentionally. Level 2, documenting, making choices transparently. Those 2 steps go a surprisingly far distance towards getting the evidence that is being generated to be clear about whose priorities and whose lived experiences and whose values are getting embedded in the data project. Okay. So that's like maybe a 60 or 90 second overview of how I try and reduce my overwhelm about how to do data equity work, especially in the middle of turbulent times, uncertain times, times when I might be running out of money or resources or teammates. I know that is happening to all of you, and it absolutely breaks my heart. So, having talked about kind of the process by which we think about how to get equity in your data project, we're going to talk about a really specific situation that I know a lot of you find yourselves in. And that is how to handle missing data. And I'm going to actually start with the scenario of a project that we are currently right this moment working on here at We All Count. And anytime that we need to make some choices, we want to stop and remember, why are we doing this project? So before I make any decisions about how we're going to handle missing data, I'm going to stop and try and think about, what's the purpose of this project? And one of the scenarios, like the project that we're working on here, is that we're partnering with a college in the United States. And this college is doing some really, really cool stuff I hope to bring them on in person to a future Talking Data Equity so they can talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it. One of the things is they're running a really innovative project that's designed to help improve the organization's admission rates of students who administratively are classified as Black, American Indian, and Hispanic. And of course, like many of us, they are trying to use quantitative data to measure their progress, right? And this is a little snapshot of kind of what it's looking like when they're trying to measure their progress with quantitative data. The organizational success rate, and I really like the way that they're framing this. They're not saying Black students are achieving this or the success rate of Black students. They're being really clear. They're measuring their success at achieving equity. So organizational success rate for students who are labeled in their data set as Black is about 26%. For students who are labeled in their data set as American Indian is about 15%. For students that are labeled Hispanic, 31%. And here's where we get to what we're going to talk about today. For students in the data labeled as missing race, 39%. So this is very interesting for them because this is their highest rate of success. And I'm not going to go too far into the programmatic details because we want to talk about the data right now. But essentially, one of the things they know for sure is that because part of their innovative way to kind of orient students to maybe applying to their college or attending their college is going through kind of unconventional, non-traditional routes that reduce barriers for students that may identify as Black, may identify as American Indian, may identify as Hispanic. Because of that, they specifically don't collect the data from those students. Like they don't enter their relationship with their college in like this conventional way of like, filling out a FAFSA form, which is like a financial aid request form, or filling out a conventional application. So interestingly, part of the success they're having is developing non-conventional paths, which do not collect the race of the student. So one of the things that they're worried about, worried is a strong word, but one of the things they're concerned about is that they're not going to be able to successfully prove or show the success that they're having with the students that they're trying or with their organizational equity goals, because part of their organizational equity goals is being fulfilled by the fact that they're not collecting race data. Okay. So what do they mean by organizational success? Great question. And we can talk about that more, but essentially in this case, they mean establishing a relationship with these students, getting an opportunity to mutually form a relationship and assess whether the college is a good fit for that student. And if it is a good fit for that student, having that student enroll in that college. That's a non-technical way of describing what they are trying to accomplish and how they're defining success. Thank you for asking. No, great question. Okay. So this has caused us to have a lot of discussions about what should we do with all of these data points that are quote unquote missing. And how are we going to know whether we're getting students to, whether we're having success with the students that we're trying to have. So more importantly than why are we collecting data in general, which is the question where we started, we're going to move to why are we collecting race data? Because it's a very specific kind of data that this particular organization is missing. We really need to remember that when we call something missing data, what we mean is that there is a resource out there that we have decided exists, that we have decided we want, and that we are not getting access to. And it's really important that we take that step back because we are creating the idea of race data, and we are creating the idea that these students have something called race data. And we've created all the boxes or the doors that we want the students to sort themselves through. And the fact that we're missing this, it's not like an inherently kind of organic thing, right? Like if we weren't collecting race data is not piling up in the forest, right? It's not just something that exists, whether we pay attention to it or not, or whether we collect it or not. So the idea that we're missing race data is a very already value laden idea, right? It already has our needs and our concepts baked into it right from the jump, which is a really important thing to remember. This is not an inherent kind of part of science. It's something that we've decided matters and something that we've constructed. The idea of race, the categories of race that we're going to use, the labels of race that we're going to use, and the fact that we're trying to collect this from students. And we've talked about all of that in lots of other Talking Data Equities. I'm happy to give you links to pay attention to those choices. And also, I'd highly recommend the work of Mimi Onuoha. Mimi Onuoha is, and we'll put a link with the recording, is a scientist, is an artist, is an amazing person. And one of their specialties is thinking about and creating science and art pieces about missing data. And they go really deep into the philosophy of the fact that missing data happens when we decide that such data exists. We decide we want that data, and then we encounter the people who may have that data not giving it to us. So missing data is inherently a power dynamic. And that is really important to remember. It's not just a math problem. It's a human power dynamic problem. So that's the next thing that we have to pay attention to. Why is some of our data missing? Why our data is missing is going to inform what we're going to do about that missing data. And there's a lot of reasons in our particular project that data is missing. There's not just one reason. Sometimes our data collectors forget to ask. Sometimes our data collectors are uncomfortable. They don't want to ask somebody what race they are, so they skip it on purpose. And sometimes our collectors just make a mistake and they don't record it. And our collectors in this case are sometimes humans and sometimes machines. Other reasons that the data is missing sometimes is related to students. Sometimes the students intentionally skip the question. Sometimes they skip the question because they don't think it's relevant. They're like, why do you need to know my race? I'm skipping this. Sometimes they're just in a hurry and they don't fill out any of the intake form. Sometimes they just miss that one question, just like going through a survey, the type form gets weird and they skip it. Sometimes it's not an accident, it's an intentional choice. Sometimes the students reject the premise. We're not going to agree with your idea that this thing you call race exists, so we're not going to check one of these boxes. They reject the premise. Sometimes the student is afraid. We've heard that students think, oh, I'm going to have resources withheld from me, or I'm going to be discriminated against, and they don't want to tell what box they might check. Sometimes they just think, I'm going to value my own privacy over providing you with this information, so I'm going to withhold race from this particular form. And sometimes they don't reject the premise, but they reject the categories. So maybe they believe in this concept of race, but they don't like the categories that are being offered. They don't see anything that's a good fit for them. And so these are students that are actively saying, I'm not going to share this information with you. And then, of course, we can't forget the system. The system is the group of people and the group of machines, and the system can also be thought of as like the database that's in your data warehouse or your data lake. Sometimes there's no attempt to collect. Sometimes the responses get corrupted. Sometimes the responses get lost. All right. We could have a whole talking data equity about reducing missing race data by going through all the different ones that cause our data to become quote unquote missing and decide how we want to address that. We would mostly go through a different wheel count tool, which is called the data relationship tool. And again, I can put a link in the forum on that so you can take a look at it. We're not going to do that today. Today, we're going to say, okay, we have missing data. We're trying to evaluate this project. The data is missing. What are we going to do about that? What approach are we going to take to the fact that, we've been running this program for 18 months and we need to understand, is it working? Is it not working? Should we put more money into it? Should we redo it? Is it helpful? Is it harmful? And of course, to whom? So I'm going to show you what we do in practice to kind of help a team of people consider the options that they have around this choice and weigh the various options in relationship to their equity priorities. And the process I'm going to show you today is going to be about this missing data choice. But the reason I'm going to show to you in kind of in depth is because you can use this process around any choice that you're making in your data project. Okay. So essentially, when it comes time to figure out, make this choice, what are we going to do with the fact that we have missing data? First is we're going to consider our approaches. So we have missing data. What are our options? What can we do? And I'm not going to share with you right now every single possible approach because I want you to get oriented to the process, but I'm going to show you a couple of approaches. And then we're going to go through and remind ourselves as a team, what are the priorities of this project? What is this project trying to achieve? And again, I'm not going to show you all possible ones, but I'm going to give you an idea. And then we're going to pay attention to who are the stakeholders, or if you don't like the word stakeholder, who are the key constituencies, who are the controlling communities, who are the impacted communities, what kind of groups of humans are involved here, and who's going to get prioritized. Okay, we're going to go through those three things. And we're going to do it in a pretty practical way. So first we make a list of the potential approaches. We get our team together and we say, all right, what could we do? How could we kind of fix this missing data problem? One is that we could go back and try and recollect data from students with missing race. So we could find the students that have missing cells in our database where race might go and directly connect with those students. So form some kind of a relationship with those students, and through the improved relationship with the students, try and get some information. That's one approach. I want to be super clear. I'm not advocating for any particular approach. It's too early to do that. This is a brainstorm. So another option is that we could indirectly recollect data from students who have missing race selection. Now, indirectly collecting data means we don't ask that student. We ask an enumerator, another person or another machine to kind of look at that person, observe that person, and select a race. Now, I understand that that idea is going to make you very, very angry. And that's cool. Again, I'm not advocating this approach. I am brainstorming possible approaches. If we don't allow ourselves to brainstorm ideas that we won't do, we're also going to miss brainstorming some ideas that are good. Okay. So stick with me here. This is a brainstorm. All right. Other things is that we could simply allow the missing data to remain missing. And when we report, we could report a missing race data category. You kind of saw me do that at the outset when I was illustrating the problem to you. Like 39% of students who they don't have race data for, they feel like they're successfully building a relationship with those students. We could just leave it at that. Another option is that we could impute race data. So there's many kind of mathematical and statistical ways to impute missing data, which means we take a lot of kind of related data about each student and we kind of predict what race we think they are. And interestingly, just a side note here, a lot of the data that many of us use on a day-to-day basis has a sociodemographic characteristics that are imputed. That's especially true if you buy any data. If you buy HR data, if you buy fundraising data, if you buy marketing data, if you buy psychographic data, a lot of it is imputed. So it's not unusual. It's controversial, but it's not unusual. We could exclude students. We could kind of say, okay, if the race data is missing from this student, we're going to exclude you when disaggregating. We could weight the existing data. So we could kind of push and pull the data that we do have to hopefully kind of have a similar profile to the whole group of students. Thank you. Love the chat. Okay. So these are some approaches. These are not all the approaches. These are some of the approaches. And there's no way as a scientist that we can look at those approaches and say, this is the best approach. Because there's no one singular universal answer to, if we care about equity, we're going to do this. Or if we care about accuracy, we're going to do this. Or if we care about rigor, we're going to do this. It's just like judging a dog show. Each dog has a very different set of standards that it's hoping to meet. Each project, each context has a very different set of needs. So after you've kind of brainstormed your priorities, the second thing we're going to do, you've brainstormed your approaches, is remember what your priorities are. And your priorities are your North Stars. What are you trying to achieve by doing this project? And again, we could go very in depth here. The tool that we would use is a wheel count tool called the Motivation Touchstone. I'll put a link to that as well. So if you want to go deep on that, I'm happy to do that. It's one of my favorite things to do. But essentially, these are some of the things that this program, remember this just one project with this one college that we're trying to achieve is. We're trying to get this done within a certain timeline. We have to make a budget request. We have to decide, is this equity initiative working or not? And we have to decide that essentially by the close of the budget request period. And so we have a limited amount of time. We have to get this done for this particular project. We also have a stated explicit goal that we're trying to make this as light of a touch as possible on students, because what we're doing is we're trying to build relationships with students that we know are historically marginalized, that we know are currently experiencing oppression and discrimination. We're trying really hard not to put the burden of our desire to improve on those students. So that's an important kind of North Star that we're going to pay attention to. We're not getting any more money. You all know like what time it is around here right now. Nobody's giving us any more money for this. So we got to do it within the same money that we have right now. We're also not getting new staff, so it has to be done within our existing technical and research capacity. Another priority is that we want the students to get to self-identify their race. Part of our equity goals in this particular project is that students get to self-identify. Some projects will have that, some projects will not have that. It's not a universal goal. We have actually talked about some really important instances in previous Talking Data Equities where other mechanisms of sorting people into demographics is actually more equitable and more appropriate. We could talk about that another day or in the forum. But we also really have the priority that we need a complete data set. We really would like to know everybody's race so that we can, I use the word race in quotes, so that we can understand, is our project working or not? So you can see we have competing priorities. We're not going to be able to achieve all of these priorities. I think I'm going to talk about two more. We really do want to make students have the opportunity to not select a race and not be assigned a race, both of those. And we want no chance of misidentification of race. It's an important, a stated goal that we don't accidentally assign a race to somebody who is not that race. Okay, so I've done two things. I've sat down with my team and we've brainstormed a set of possible approaches, and we've gone through an exercise where we've kind of outlined all the North Stars of our project. What we're going to do now is we are going to try and figure out how these two things might align. So we try and do this in practice using tools. I will share this mirror board with you. I'm not going to share this mirror board with you right now. Actually, I'm going to share it with you so that you can see it, but I'm not going to share it with you right now so that you can edit it. Because if there's 200 people trying to edit this mirror board, it's going to not work out. But I am going to share it with you so that you can see it in case you want to zoom in more closely than I'm zooming in here on my screen. But essentially, you get the idea, okay? What we have in each of these rows are the approaches that we've thought of, ways that we could handle the fact that we have missing data. Approach one, I'll zoom in a lot here so you can see it. Approach one is report a missing race data group. Approach two is recollect the missing data, go back to the students that have missing race data and try and get it. We can do that directly, talking directly with the students. We can do that indirectly, having somebody look at the students. We could impute the race data, we could ignore, we could wait. So these are the approaches that we talked about, each row. And then each one of these columns are the different priorities that our project has. These are our North Stars. We really want no additional burden to be placed on the students. We're not getting more time or money. We're not getting new staff. We want the students to self-identify. We don't want somebody else to tell that student what race they probably are. We want to give them an option not to declare. So the rows are our priorities. And for sure, we're not going to achieve every single one of these priorities. We are not going to have a complete data set where everybody gets assigned a race and for the same time and money with no additional burden placed on students, have every student declare their race. We can't achieve all of these things. So our job is to consider which of our approaches corresponds or connects with different priorities. So when I do this in, I was going to say real life, this is of course also real life. So when I do this, like in the project with the college, instead of with you guys on you friends on talking data equity, each person gets their own piece of paper and a bunch of stickers, and they put a sticker in each kind of, for each approach that they think would meet the priority. So in other words, if you think that the approach report a missing race data group is going to align with or correspond well with, say, this priority, that the students get to, I did something terrible to that line. Let's just get rid of that line for right now. Students get to self-identify their race. So if you think that this approach to handling missing data is going to align with this priority, you put your sticker there. Okay, you see how this works? And you can have more than one sticker. So if you think that reporting a missing race data group also achieves this priority, no additional burden placed on students, you can put a sticker there. And let's choose a different approach. Let's say that we're going to impute the race data. I saw in the chat that that's pretty common with a lot of the work that some of you do, and it is extremely common, much more common than we realize once we start making data biographies. So imputing race, that means we're going to predict a student's race based on other data. Is it in alignment? Actually, I'll ask you, because we have plenty of time. It's only 12:40. Imputing data. Do you think that imputing data helps us align with any of our priorities? You can put it in the chat. What do you think about imputing data? You think it doesn't align with any of the priorities that it's not going to align with any of these? I think it might align with one of them. Yeah. Given the statistical capacity of this team, it can be done in the same timeline. Imputing data also puts no additional burden on the students. It doesn't ask us to go back to the students or talk to the students anymore. And it can be done for the same amount of money given the statistical capacity of the current team. So this wouldn't be true for everybody. I'm not saying for every single project it could be done for the same money. You might have to hire somebody. In this case, it can be done for the same money. Okay, great question. What does impute mean? Yeah, great question. So impute means, think of it as predicting. So if I have a student and I know a couple of things about that student, but I don't know what race they are, there are very sophisticated statistical models that'll take the information we do know. Let's just oversimplify it and be like, we know the student's last name and we know the zip code where the student lives. And so we're going to take that information and predict what race they are. They are more advanced than that. Again, I'm not advocating for imputation. I'm just saying that's what it is. Okay, somebody is doing a great thing in the chat, which is, does it align with the EDGAP framework? So that's a fantastic question. I don't know what those acronyms mean, but I assume it's some kind of ethical, ownership framework. So the EDGAP framework right now is actually not listed as one of our priorities. And this happens a lot when we're doing these types of exercises. So I'm really grateful that you've asked that question. So when the question comes up, hey, now that I'm thinking about imputation of race, I'm not sure if it aligns with the EDGAP framework. And we'll say, hey, we didn't list that as one of our priorities. Is that one of our priorities? Which is a very important moment for your team to have a clarifying conversation about, is that one of your priorities or not? And if it is, then you just go ahead and you just add another column to your matrix or your table, and you have yourself a documented additional priority. And that is a huge sign of success. Honestly, one of the hardest things about getting equity into data projects is getting the people involved in the data project to be able to be explicit about their priorities. It's really challenging. So the fact that you've brought up a new priority is fantastic, and I'm super grateful for that. Great. All students get assigned a race. That's right. So even though there's a lot of things that aren't great about imputation, one thing it would give us is all students would get assigned a race. All right. Love this. Love this. Thank you so much. Technically, I think imputing race would predict what race they would select on whatever survey they use. And that is correct. I am so grateful for that additional attention to detail, because myself, just like a lot of the other people in my profession, we throw around these words race much, much too easily. And imputation would not predict certain aspects of this conception of race. It would not, I think I probably said predict what race they are or something like that. And that is a misuse of proper language and shows like a little trip or a little problem in my mental model of what we're doing, which is exactly why we have these conversations. And I am so grateful for that. So thank you. All right, I'm just going to see how much more time I want to use on this part. Are you getting the hang of how we would do the matrix, or do you want to keep going? So we could keep going. Thumbs up. Okay, most people have the hang of it. Great. All right. So you would first, the way that we do it is we would hand out a piece of paper and some stickers, and we would let everybody have a little bit of independent time to kind of think about their ideas of which of these priorities get fulfilled by each of these approaches. And we do say, if you want to add extra rows for different approaches, extra columns for different priorities, that's great. Then we would come back together, either in small groups or a whole group, depending on the size of the team. If the team is, 4 to 6 people, we just come back as a team. Sometimes the team, I know some of you here on this call have done like really big health projects with We All Count, where, the team is like 7 organizations that each sent 10 people. So we would do small groups. We'd work our way up to larger discussions. But then the final kind of layer of this is where we really get to the equity. Because what we really want to do now is we want to take a new set of stickers, which I have over here, which is a star sticker, a diamond sticker, and a triangle sticker. I wouldn't use a star if possible, because we used the star to represent the North Star with priorities. But with Miro, sometimes you have to use stars if you don't. Anyways, long story short, if you have a shape that's different than a star, use that. What we're going to do now is these new types of stickers represent stakeholders or key constituencies or communities or organizations that are part of your project. So in this case, I'm going to really simplify it here for this example. And I'm going to say that there's 3 groups of stakeholders. There's group 1, which is the funder. That's the part of the college that decided to use the money that they had and try to do this new innovation to get more successful at attracting and integrating students that were Black, American Indian, and Hispanic. So there's a funding constituency here. And the second constituency or set of stakeholders here is, of course, the learners. So they are a directly impacted community for sure, whether they are aware of it and know it or not. And then the third constituency or stakeholder group here is, we're going to think of it for today as like the programmatic arm of this college. So we're going to use the diamond to be the financial arm. Think of that as the funder. The yellow is going to be the program arm. Think of that as the delivery, like the program delivery stakeholder. And then this is the students. Think of that as, as the students. And so what we're going to do is we want to take these new stickers and have a conversation about which priorities are most important to which stakeholders. And there's a lot of ways we can do this. We can do this by talking directly with members of each of these key constituencies. Or if if you have 10 minutes to make this decision about what you're doing with missing data, you're going to just have to do your best at figuring it out. So who here wants to just pretend for a minute that you are the funding arm of this? So as a funder, which of these priorities do you think might be most important to you? You can just put it in the chat. That is correct. All students get assigned a race. All students get assigned a race is very, very important to the funder of this particular project, because the funding arm really wants to know, is it working? Should we devote more of our limited resources or not? Can be done for the same money. Exactly. That's also a priority for the funding arm of this project, because they don't want to give any more money. And that's not a bad or a wrong thing. Maybe they just see that as like how they need to shepherd the resources that they have. Okay, you get the idea. Let's go to the program delivery arm. Let's pretend you're the program delivery arm of this school, this college. What priorities do you think might be most important to you? No additional burden placed on students. Fantastic. That is actually the way it's going in real life in this program too. Students get to self-identify. Great. Perfect. Can be done within the staff capacity. Very, very good. Exactly. Okay. So you get the way this works, right? We're going to do one more because we're running out of time here at Talking Data Equity. If you were going to go and talk to the potential students that might enroll in this college, that are trying to be attracted to this college by this program, what do you think their priorities might be? And again, I know that you don't represent this constituency necessarily. Some of you actually do. No additional burden for students. Whoops. Absolutely right. All right. So let's do one more. Option not to declare. Exactly. Okay. So you get how this works. And this is where we get to the equity part of making sure that when we align an approach with a set of priorities, we don't automatically or on purpose only choose priorities that are important to certain key constituencies or certain stakeholder groups. Or if we do, we're really transparent about it. So if we decide what's most important here is the funding arm, then we're going to prioritize the columns that have that stakeholder's stickers in it. And we're going to then select how to handle missing data. We're going to select the approach that has the most number of dots in the columns that matter to the funding arm. Or if we decide we really, for this project, we absolutely need to prioritize the preferences of the learners, because if this isn't a learner-centered project, it's nothing. We're going to choose the approaches to handle this missing data that have the most dots, the most stickers in these arms. And there's a couple of questions in the chat about, couldn't you reduce priorities first and make this smaller? You could, but you might have a hard time figuring out which priorities can get removed before you think through key constituencies. Having said that, what I'm showing you is one way to think the decisions like this through as a team. It is not the only way. If you have a better way to consider your options, think through the equity implications of your options, and then select an option, that's great. I am not saying that this is like the be all and end all way that you have to do things. I'm just showing you one way that we have found to kind of break through very smart groups of scientists, many years of training, that we would select our approach to missing data by choosing what is the most objective, or we would select our approach to missing data by choosing what is going to give us the quote unquote most accurate answer, or, whatever is the quote unquote scientific best practice. None of those ideas hold up when you start to push it down. That actually is not the way to produce accurate, rigorous, reliable, useful, and equitable evidence. We absolutely have to consider the options that are in front of us, think through what North Stars or what priorities those options help us achieve, because there's always going to be a couple, and then give some thought to what group of key constituencies those priorities are actually aligned around. So this is one way we find a concrete approach is really good especially if you have people that are really fancy and have lots of PhDs in the same room and needing to make decisions with people that are really fancy in a different area, like have a very good understanding of social justice or community advocacy, but don't necessarily have like technical statistical language that they want to use. We don't want those people to get kind of bullied or overpowered by people who might have more statistical training.